Hello, my name is Enkhzaya, or you can call me Zaya, and I am from Mongolia. I am currently a senior at Korea University, majoring in economics and double majoring in English language and literature. So for Ungtoring 101, I would like to talk about the five study tips that I have learned throughout my years at university. And when it comes to study tips, there were many study tips that I have picked up from my friends, and also I have learned that some study tips are not just for me. So I would like to share the 5 study tips that have been very, very helpful for me, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. So the first study tip that I would like to share is to always have a planner. This may not necessarily be a study tip, but I think that it is very, very important to have a planner with you, a study planner, and a planner in general, in order for you to keep up to date and not procrastinate. So what I like to do is I like to have a yearly planner, which has sections: a monthly section, a weekly section, and a daily section. So on the monthly part, I like to write down due dates for assignments. No matter big or small, I like to just have it down there so that I know that something is due that day. And then I also like to mark my exam period, the time what time I have my exam and where I have my exam. And I also like to write down team project meetings and just meetings with friends. And if there are any parties, or if there is a gathering, I like to write it down just so I know where I have to be sometime in that month. And I also like to use the weekly planner section, where I like to have just bullet points of things that I want to get done by the end of the week. For example, if there's an exam due or an assignment due on the Wednesday, then I like to write it down, study for that exam, give that exam, or if I have to go to a gathering, then I have to say attend blah blah blah, or if I have to call a friend or meet up with a friend, then I like to write that down in the weekly planner. And also in the daily planner, I like to have just daily to-do lists. So for the daily to-do lists, when a professor gives assignments or homework for the day, I like to write it down over there. And although I don't have to get it done on that day, I like to just write it down so that the next day, if I didn't do it the day before, then I would write that again. And I also think that it's very important to use the daily to-do list, because I personally feel very satisfied when I do a check next to something I did. It makes me feel very accomplished, and it kind of motivates me to be more effective and more efficient and more motivated to do more. The second study tip that I would like to share is to learn how you study best. So I think that everyone is very different in terms of how they study, and they concentrate better in different environments. So in my case, I like to study alone, and rather than studying at home, I think I study best in the school study rooms, where everyone else is studying, there's no noise, and you just have that time to focus on what's in front of you. While I know other people who study best in coffee shops, or they study better when they are studying it with friends and teams and asking each other questions. So I think that it's very important that you find out how you study best. And I also think that it is very important to find out which study techniques work best for you. For example, do you study better when you are reading from the textbook and memorizing? Or do you study better when you are talking to people? And I think that especially in university, rather than quantity, it's more about the quality of how you study. The third tip that I would like to share is to review. So whatever class you have, on the day of the lecture or the day after, I strongly encourage you to review what you learned. And it doesn't have to be for a long period of time. Just sit down and look over your notes for like 10 minutes. And I think that's very important because I personally did not do that, and I regret it a lot because just that 5 minutes to review or that 10 minutes to review what you learned, you know what you did understand in the lecture, and you also find out the things that you did not understand. So you have the chance to actually go up to the professor the next lesson and ask them what you don't understand. And the professors are very willing to explain everything carefully and thoroughly to you. And I think that this is very important because if, for example, you don't fully understand chapter 1, then and you don't ask the professor or anyone for help, then the next classes, chapter 2 and chapter 3, you're gonna struggle as well because you just did not understand chapter 1 in the first place. And I also think that by reviewing daily or weekly, by reviewing weekly, it really helps when it comes to midterms or finals. Because for me, when I didn't review like weekly, when it was time for midterms or finals, I found myself like having so much to study for all my classes. And there were times where I had to like go from chapter 1 to like midterm material in like a day, and I could not understand everything properly. And to add on to that, this is not necessarily reviewing, but I feel like it's very important that if you have time to read the material or go over the PPT before class. This is also something that I did not do, but I think that it is very important. Tip number 4 is note-taking. So there are different ways how students take notes during the lecture. Some people like to take notes on their laptops. Other people like to handwrite their notes. And other people like to print out the PPT and write next to it. And I think that whatever works best for you, you should use that way. And just because everyone else is typing their notes, but you think you study better or you memorize better when you handwrite notes, then do it in a way that suits you better. So what I like to do is, in many of my classes, our professors uploaded the PPT of the lecture before the class so that we have time to print it out before coming in for the lecture. And I think that when I have the PPT printed out and everything the professor is showing on the board is in front of me on paper, it saves me a lot of time. Instead of writing down everything that is on the presentation without actually understanding it, I think that because I have it in front of me, I can listen to the professor better, and I can only take notes of the things that I find most important or underline and circle key terms that the professor discusses. And also, I think that when taking notes, it's very important that you include examples that the professor gives. Or based on what the professor is teaching, write down examples that you can think of. That way, it's much easier for you to study when it comes to midterms and finals. And another thing I like to do when I am taking notes is I like to divide my notes. So first, when I am listening to the lecture, I like to write down as much as possible. And if the professor gives out clues as to which concepts are more important, or if the professor gives examples, I like to write that in a different color pen or make some sort of like sign next to it, like a star. And I also like to underline and circle key words and key terms so that I can look it up in our textbook later. Tip number 5, or the last tip that I would like to give, is to go to office hours. So what is office hours? Office hours is the time that the professor gives students to come and visit him and So it's usually once or twice a week for an hour, and the professor is just waiting in his room available. So if any students have any questions regarding that class, or they are unsure about a certain concept or a certain chapter, the students can book a time with the professor during that office hour, or they can just knock on the door and see if the professor is available and ask questions. So I personally did not go to office hours for the first 2 years in university, and then I slowly began to realize that it is there for a reason, and it's very important. So when you go to office hours, you don't necessarily have to have like big questions, or you don't even have to have like specific questions. You can just go in and ask the professor about like the concepts that you are not too sure of, or if you think that you are lacking in certain aspects, ask the professor how you can improve. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and good luck, everyone.